Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
We have never figured this out. Yeah, here it is. Here's my family's story. You're lucky I'm good and drunk, otherwise I wouldn't even tell it here. I was 7, my brother 10, my mom in her early 40s, my grandmother in her 60s. No one was too young or too senile to not remember this nonsense, to not be sure of the details. Yet still, there's no explanation. Grandma lived on an isolated country road in Carolina that was named after her family, since they were the only crazy fuckers who lived on the land for about 1,000 acres. And I do mean crazy. We have stories about relatives that start with, "You remember that time Uncle Bob was in the ditch with a shotgun?" Which time? Her house had been empty for several weeks while she'd been visiting us in Florida, but we were all back, spending the weekend with her before trekking back to the Sunshine State. The house is in the country, literally over train tracks, past a salvage yard and her nearest neighbor, a cousin. Everyone is related to everyone who owns a house on the road, ain't within screaming distance. Yes, that seems to be a real system of measurement, screaming distance. It's early in the AM, like just before daybreak. We're awake because these are farm freaks who wake at the crack of dawn from sheer ingrained habit. We're eating cereal when we hear someone pull up outside. Curious, we all ran to the big picture window that looks out into the front yard. There is a strange truck there. No one seems to be behind the wheel, though the engine is idling. The truck is, well, old for one thing. It's old-timey, like from maybe the 1930s. You could picture the Joad family heading to California in this thing. Grapes of wrath and shit. It's rusted, but it was probably once painted blue. We stare at the thing, bewildered. Mom asks Grandma if she knows who that is. "Nope, not a clue," says Grandma. She runs to get the phone to call her cousin and ask him to come up. She thinks maybe it's a hired hand and he's just at the wrong farm. Just as she asks him to come on down, the phone goes dead. Well, that's unsettling. All at once, there is a loud, insistent banging on the front door. We all scream. My grandma, who is terrifyingly resourceful, huddles us all into the living room, away from the windows so no one outside can see. Then while Mom, me and my brother tremble there on the couch, she grabs a serrated bread knife from the kitchen and cautiously approaches the front door. She peeks out a side window, very stealthily. She turns back to us and looks confused. She shakes her head like, no one is there. We all kind of breathe easier. Then every goddamn door in the house starts banging, relentlessly. I can still hear it. Rhythmic and terrifying, like all the doors are about to splinter and crack. There were 2 doors in the basement beneath us, so the sound is also a reverberation at our feet. The 3 ground floor doors are shaking. We can see them trembling and jerking on their hinges from our vantage point on the couch. Finally, Mom runs to the window. Either from a psychotic break with reality or terror, I have no clue. She cries, "Oh, thank Christ, cousin is here." We run to her and peek out the picture window. There is no one that we can see in the yard, but we can't see all the doors from our viewpoint. Cousin walks by truck with a shotgun in his hand. Cousin, it should be noted, has pretty much every gun ever made. He looks puzzled, looking at the rear of the truck, then he glances in the cab window and he stops. He goes pale, runs a hand down his face. Then he runs towards the house, towards us. My grandmother flings open the kitchen door as she sees him coming. He shouts, "Everyone get behind the couch, get down." He runs past us as we bolt for the couch. The banging starts again. All the doors, and now we can hear the windows rattle. It's like a tornado or the end of the world. We are too scared to even scream. Cousin flings open the front door and fires the huge shotgun. Once. Bang. Deafening. As he does, the truck roars to life. We scramble up. The banging stops mercifully. Cousin is advancing onto the lawn, gun leveled at the truck. We ran behind him, wanting to be out of that shaking, quivering house and near the dude with the gun. The truck peels out, backwards, cutting across the yard and revving up to a breakneck speed. Tires squeal. Rubber is burned. Cousin fires again and we all cower behind him. He blows out the back window with the sound of 1,000 plates smashing into linoleum. but the truck never even hiccups, just roars down the road. No tags, not even a vanity plate on the back. There was no one behind the wheel of that thing. We all had a clear view. Everyone agreed, not a driver in the cab. Well, not anything we could see anyhow. The police were called. The phone line had been cut. There was not a single boot print in the entire yard except Cousin's, from where he'd run into and out of the house. Cousin reported that there had been no plate, but when he looked into the cab, it looked like something from a horror movie. He said there were all kinds of weird restraints, handcuffs, C-clamps, nylon straps, and he said the floorboards looked covered in what looked like dried blood to him. This is a guy who usually has a half a dead buck in his pickup during hunting season. I trust him to know dried blood. Cousin said he thought he saw a blur of something out the picture window and ran to fire the first shot, but missed because once he stood there, nothing or no one was on the lawn or in the truck. Then the damn truck shot backwards out of the yard and out of our lives, leaving no answers, just a deep sense of unease every time we'd visit Grandma's house on that lonely road. Grandma and Cousin have passed. Deeply religious people, they stuck by their unchanging versions of the story until they died. My brother, mother, and I have never been able to figure it out. Neither did the cops, I think it should be noted. We don't know how all the windows and doors were banging, and we don't know why we never saw a soul anywhere, or how they could get around the sides of the house without leaving a trace in the damp Carolina soil.
It just happens sometimes. They hardly leave a trace. Sometimes it's a shoe, just left beside a road or a pathway through your park. Sometimes a newspaper that gets carried away from the seat they once occupied. Sometimes it's nothing but a piece of hair that is so insignificantly small no one ever finds it. It's the last thing that was holding them down. I know. Because I nearly went through with it myself. You're always alone when he meets you. For me, I was sitting on a park bench, drunk out of my mind, trying to stop the world from spinning. There was the slightest shift in the air as he sat down beside me. The slight movement was enough to make my stomach churn mutinously, and I was so far gone that I remember my usual paranoia of strangers in parks at God knows what time of the morning didn't help me out. "You look like shit," he said. I raised my head from resting on my knees so my nose wasn't squashed anymore, and looked up at the guy who sat next to me. He wore a really long coat with the collar up and a hoodie underneath it. I couldn't see his face at all. It was like there was a void, but he had a cigarette in his hand, and when he raised it to his lips, his fingers and the end of the butt disappeared into the void, only to come out again a moment later. "You want a drag?" he offered, holding out the cigarette. I shook my head, that queasy feeling coming back. We sat in silence for a long time, him smoking his never-ending cigarette, one black jean-clad leg folded over the other, so his bare foot rested on his thigh just above his knee. "No shoes?" I finally asked, sitting up enough so I could let my head fall back. The first rays of sunlight hadn't even begun to stretch over the horizon. "Nah," he replied, taking another long drag. "I don't need 'em. Not where I'm from. Not where I'm going. Not where I am right now." For some reason, I got the feeling he wasn't about to stab me or mug me. In fact, I felt oddly safe with the faceless, shoeless guy. "Oh yeah? And where's that, under some bushes in this park?" I asked. I've never been a particularly nice or compassionate guy. Just the way I was brought up, with the beatings and the yelling. I have a toxic heart, apparently, just like my parents. It's why I prefer to be alone. To hurt alone. To dwell alone. But he didn't get angry or upset. He just laughed. He had a genuine, raspy laugh. For some reason, it made me smile. No, I'm not homeless," he countered, flicking his cigarette to the ground, his calloused heel coming down to crush it into the pavement. "But let's not talk about me. Let's talk about you." I felt my hackles rise. I didn't want to talk about me, something a lot of people never get. "I just do, man." He tilted his head towards me, and I looked past the all-black clothing he wore to see the deeper nothingness that should have been his face. I don't stop walking much, but when I do, it's because some poor soul needs to be given the choice of what I got to offer. I shook my head at this. "You aren't fucking real. There's no way. I'm asleep." I tried to stand upright, but there was something holding my elbow and rubbing my back. It's him, in front of me. He moved without me even seeing him. It's all right. Now let me just explain to you what I gotta do, then you can make a choice, he said. I realized that he was pretty much holding me up, and I really didn't want to get attacked and murdered by some faceless guy if he got angry with me. So he led me back to sitting on the bench. Now then, I know your life is a wreck. It ain't the biggest wreck I seen, and you got some chance of potential, but it ain't gonna be easy. I'm only giving you the choice out of the goodness of my heart, he says, gesturing at my state, jeans, dirty jumper, scuffed sneakers. What do you mean when you say choice, and why would I accept anything a faceless guy offers me? Chill out for a second. He twists his fingers, and another cigarette appears in it, already lit. He takes a puff and flicks off the excess, but it doesn't grow any smaller. I look the way I gotta look in order for you to listen to me, man. The way I look right now is really your fault, because when I walk, I change depending on which poor fucker I'll see next. So you're not real? You're an illusion in my head? Have I gone crazy? I asked. He snorted. I'm real, all right. And you ain't crazy, but hear me out for a sec. I can offer you a job, he said, pointing the cigarette at me for emphasis. It was my turn to laugh then. The shoeless, faceless guy who chain smokes wants to offer a drunken lowlife a job? It was too funny. I laughed until there were tears in my eyes. Once I was done, though, I realized he was laughing with me. That's right, he nodded. The situation began to dawn on me as the sky lightened. Okay, so, what job is it exactly? I asked, clasping my hands together between my knees. Smoke rose languidly from the void as I heard an exhale. A job like mine, he said, leaning back so that his face is turned up to the sky. A job as a shoeless guy with no face who talks to strangers and apparently walks a lot, I quipped, tilting my head at him. Well, yeah, he said finally. I began to feel out of my depth. And why on earth would I do that? I asked. He just shrugged again. I don't know, man. I assume I made the choice to do this once, when I was like you. Then for some reason I just walked away from it all. Isn't it lonely? I thought about how far he must have come to not remember why he would leave everything behind in such a way. Am I alone right now? He asked back. No, but you're with someone only for a moment to ask if they want to walk away from their entire life to be a wanderer who never settles or has a family, like you. I hissed, feeling somehow defensive over my shitty existence. He didn't laugh, didn't defend himself. I can remember the lives of every person I meet and everything that has happened to them and will happen. That's why I give them the choice. You mean something's going to happen to me? I asked, afraid. Something bad? Suddenly he coughed, and then his index finger came out to poke me in the chest. The ball is already rolling, man. It's already begun. This is the point of no return. You take the job or you deal with what happens if you choose to say no. This isn't about me. It's about you. Am I gonna die? He shrugged. Everybody dies someday. I just show up when the how is decided, not exactly when. So you know how I'm gonna die? I ask as he inhaled. Exhaled, pokes me in the chest as though getting a point across. One time I met a kid, on a bike. He had a good life, family that loved him, but he didn't have much time. No, nasty future ahead for him, coming in fast. I spoke to him and he was smart too. Caught on real fast that the day I met him was gonna be his day. For some reason I felt upset. It was as though the stranger I have come to think of as the best conversation I've had in months is channeling something to me. What did the kid choose? I asked. He shook his head. I'm not allowed to tell you what he chose, but I can tell you that what he chose because he told the person he loved most that he loved them beforehand, and he didn't want any other goodbye because then it would be sadder. Kid was sharp as a tack, yeah? Clean goodbyes are always easier. Does it hurt to take the job? He laughed. I'm here to give you an out, man. It won't hurt. In fact, you won't remember yourself. Too busy taking care of others and learning about them. Plus, no judgment if you say no. Everybody's got their reasons. If you take the job, it's clean, it's easy. You forget. and then you get to pass on when you are good and ready. I don't do it because I've yet to find one cat who didn't make me want to stick around for a little bit. There's always another smart kid or drunk angry guy who has a snappy sense of humor. Otherwise, you stick it out here in your suffrage, try to better it out before it comes, see if you can change the when or fix up those relationships. But the how has been decided, man. If you pick yes, it's clean as the president's bathroom. You don't have to deal with your pain anymore. I thought about my bitter parents, about my girlfriend who ran out on me, who I hadn't seen for a week, but I know she's been slowly moving her stuff out when I'm not home, and I know one day she's coming for her cat. I thought about the trouble I've been having breathing, and the rattle I didn't notice the faceless guy has when he inhales or exhales a large breath. Him poking me in the chest, how much he dresses like me. Does it hurt to stay? He flicked the cigarette so far it landed in the grass on the other side of the path. He stood and walked over to it, squishing it into the grass with his big toe. Maybe a little, maybe a lot, maybe not at all. I know the how, man, but there's all different kinds of hurt. What about people I know, my family, my ex? How will they be affected if I take the job? He snapped his fingers at me and clasped my shoulders in front of me again. Aha, you ain't that stupid. You know that kid asked me the same question. Honestly, if you take the job, it'll be like you just disappeared. Missing persons will never find you. You just walk away from everything. Nobody sees nothing, nobody hears nothing. They'll grieve, sure. But, time heals all wounds and stuff like that. Depending on whether or not you want to take the job and leave their lives forever now, or spend what you got left salvaging that or thinking about them until the end. Because if you take the job, you won't be able to remember their faces, let alone their names. I stare at the faceless guy and feel sad. Not for me this once. For him. That's why this is the way it is. He waved a hand in front of the void. I don't know what I look like. My clothes and height can change, but I never get to see my own face. Neither does anybody else. I felt something wet and salty hit my lip, and I realized I was crying. What about your name, dude? What do I call you? He just shrugged and looked over to where the sky was beginning to tint from navy to a light blue with a hazy yellow dusting the edges at the horizon. You gotta give that up, too. I was shaking as I stared at him. I coughed. Look, I gotta go, right? Gotta keep on keeping on. If you want the job, you go down that way. He pointed to a path leading into the park. If you want to walk away from all this, you walk the way behind you and go straight on home. But don't follow me or you'll forget this talk. Almost all the people follow me. Always got more questions or wanting to cheat. Some are just so lonely they don't want me to go. Some hope that following me will take them somewhere better. But it won't. You'll just wake up walking down a street hungover with the last thing you remember being sitting down on this park bench. It won't change the how, and for some, it's made the when come a lot more quickly. If you go down your new career path, it'll feel a little tingly. But you gotta keep going. Sometimes some stuff gets left behind, like an item of clothing. Usually it's a shoe or something. But even if they come through, you'll probably end up losing them anyway. And you can't bring vehicles or anything. And don't worry about stripping down. Just walk. Everything gets taken care of, and you'll know what you gotta do. It's all up to you now, man. Have yourself a wonderful morning. With that, he turned on his heel and offered me a small wave. He glanced over his shoulder before he walked right through the traffic lights without waiting for a green light. I panicked, but then I saw a flash of bare feet padding away from me and a swish of a long black coat as he turned a corner. I sat on the bench and glanced down the pathway into the unknown. The tickle in my chest that started earlier that week caused me to cough. I thought about the cat still in my apartment, the ex-girlfriend who I noticed had even been taking photographs of when we were together, me yelling at her because I couldn't handle work and our fighting and the no money, my parents who now lived apart and hated each other slightly more than they hated me, used me as a bargaining chip in their divorce. Whatever reason the faceless guy had for taking the job, it was his choice. No judgment. And whatever reason I have that I decided not to, that was my choice too. I didn't want to forget, so I didn't follow him. I walked home.
I've lived in a pinewood forest since 2004, off and on. I own the house I live in. I lived in town from 2009 to 2010, then moved back to the house. I moved to a city from 2012 to 2016, moved back to the house, and did a little traveling for work and short-term stays intermittently afterwards. There's a house in front of me about 2 acres away, and another one behind my house about 1 acre. They rarely make noise. There are other houses in the neighborhood, but they're further out. I've been hearing weird shit lately, not inexplicable, but weird nonetheless. I've also seen my neighbor acting weird at night lately. I smoke cigarettes, so I've been outside at random times, day and night. There's a train that runs at least a mile away. There's a bridge nearby, so I assume it blares its horn when crossing it. Sometimes it blares and the volume makes sense, but other times it's so loud it sounds like it could be right behind the neighbors to the back. It's reasonably close sounding, and it doesn't really make sense why it's always blaring its horn day or night. I've Google mapped a bridge it runs over, followed the path, and it doesn't run near the neighborhood. I've looked up the meaning behind train horns and what they're used for, and the honking doesn't follow the common signals. I attribute it to deer on the tracks, but the volume is always inconsistent. I've always been under the impression that train horns aren't volume controlled. The times it sounds off and sounds unreasonably close, it makes no sense to me. Weirds me out. It's been making me uneasy. One time I heard weird fox noises in the woods. I've never noticed how weird this train was before. I jokingly call it the ghost train now. Non-rhythmic car bass noises at night. Just 1 or 2 bass rumbles at random, coming from what I assume are the other neighbors' houses, which are at least 3 to 5 acres away. They're not really the loud bass type of people, I might be wrong. That night, I heard music playing from a car's bass in the neighbor's direction. Seems normal, but then I heard what I guessed was them using a karaoke machine. Not weird, but I didn't expect it. I couldn't make out what they were saying or singing or anything. The night before that, a train was going off after it stopped blaring. It's not a nearby sound, not loud enough to make me question its distance. I heard talking in the woods from the opposite direction as the car-based neighbors. There's a house in that direction about 3 acres away. I've heard him play music late at night. I've never heard him just talking before, and I couldn't make out what was being said, but I wasn't going to stay outside long enough to figure out what the talking was about. Owls. I've never heard owls in the woods my entire time in this house. I've always liked owls and was excited the first time I heard one. But it's still weird to me to hear an owl after years of never hearing them or stories of owls in high school. Graduated 2010. Frogs. I live a solid 5 acres from a lake. I've seen toads near my house, so it's not foreign to me that I'm hearing frogs or toads. It's the quantity that's weird. It sounds like a shit ton of them going off nearby. Why so many near the house and not at the lake? I don't know much about the traveling patterns of frogs, but I would assume they wouldn't hang out that far away from water. Coyotes howling. A ton of them. They go off during the winter mostly, but every once in a while I'll hear them now. One winter it sounded like 40 of those fuckers. It probably wasn't 40, but they were howling and fighting really loud. Stranger though was the fact that it seemed like they were near the lake then, but recently it sounds like they're around the neighbors across the way. I've never seen them or anything, and only ever heard them. My neighbors in the front sit on a small hill. Sometimes, if they have their lights on, you can see them from my house. It's pretty unusual for them to have their family room light on at night. It doesn't seem like they spend a lot of time in that part of their house. They will, however, have an upstairs bedroom light on early into the night. The other night, I noticed a small light coming from the middle of their yard. I'd never seen it before. I stood on my porch watching it. It wasn't moving or anything, nor was it sitting close to the ground like a lawn lamp. It seemed like it was being held, but I couldn't really tell. Then it went off. That's weird, I thought as I finished my cigarette and went back inside. Later that night, I went back out for another cigarette. The same type of light was there, to the left of where it was originally, and closer to the road. I couldn't keep my eyes off it. I got a sense of uneasiness from it this time. I smoked my cigarette, staring at this light, and it didn't go off. I finished my cigarette and went back inside. It's very unlike that neighbor to be in his front yard past dusk. His yard is dark, so the first time I saw that light, I thought maybe it was him with a flashlight looking for something, but it just went off. It doesn't make sense to me that he wouldn't move around in his yard. Whoever it was just standing there randomly turned off the light. Later it was out there again, but closer to the street and off to the left, at least 2 hours later. Later that same night I heard my dogs barking. One of my dogs barks at anything. The other dog I have rarely barks. I've had the one that rarely barks for 3 years, and I could count on one hand how many times he's barked. He started barking, and as I listened to him go off, I heard steps on my porch. It made me wish I had a gun. I know it's not scary. My intent wasn't to scare, but just to recount some of the weird shit I've been noticing in my neck of the woods. If anyone has been living in rural parts of the world, I'd like to hear your weird stories as well. These things have been making me go WTF or given me unsettling feelings. I've never known my neighbors to be the noisy types or have weird habits, so I chalk it up to quarantine-induced boredom.
In my Year 7 class was staying at this campsite area. I was going to be staying in this old wooden 10-bed dorm with some other girls. The first day, after just chucking our bags in the room and going on to do all the regular activities like gold panning, etc., we came back to our room to get ready for bed. There was an adjoining bathroom that was tiled and pretty sterile, and had a long metal trough one side for hand washing and about 5 showers down the other side, with 2 toilets side by side at the back end. The bathroom had just a swinging, windowless door separating it from the bathroom, with the light switch on the bedside's wall. We were all tucked up in bed talking and reading aloud the sex bits in Cosmo magazine to each other, while the last of us to get ready for bed, Lily, was still in the shower. Her water turned off and we expected her to come out in her towel after a few minutes. She didn't. About 15 minutes passed, and a parent's chaperone came in to do lights off. She asked where Lily was, and someone said she was still in the bathroom. The parent went up to the swinging door and pushed it while walking forward. She smacked her forehead right on the door, which had not shifted. The shower tap started again. The mum started knocking on the door, telling Lily to open up. Some of us got out of bed to try and push the door open, but it wouldn't budge. The shower tap was stopping and starting, and the mum wanted to know if any of us knew if Lily was upset. She had seemed fine all day, but wasn't making a sound from the bathroom. The mum said she was going to go grab our teacher for some manly muscle power and left. One of the other girls immediately pushed the door just with one palm, and it swung open immediately. The room was pitch black. We were all deathly silent, and all you could hear was the dripping of the shower. We couldn't hear or see Lily. There was this terrible vibe. I've never ever felt anything like it before or since. As one, we all started backing away from the now closed door. A few of us had started crying. I was too, although I hadn't realised it. The mum returned with our teacher, who looked around at the room of sobbing girls, said, "Calm down, you lot," and pushed the door with his palm. It opened easily and again was pitch black inside. No sounds this time. He flicked the switch while holding the door open, and we could see Lily, wrapped in her towel and squatting in the middle of the room, with her head down. She looked up a few seconds after the light was flicked on, and her face still gives me chills. Her mouth was frozen in a grimace, and her face was drained of colour. She started heaving her shoulders with this awful dry sobbing sound, this ack, ack, ack noise. The mum ran in to help her out, and she burst into real tears when she sat down on her bunk. She wouldn't say why the light was off and how the door had stayed closed, even after calming down, but didn't want to stay with us in the dorm. She went to sleep in the same rooms as the parent chaperones, and the remaining girls and I were told by our teacher that Lily was homesick. We were told off for locking her in the room with the light off, even though there was no possible way we could have done it. We finally went to bed, all really unnerved by what had happened. Normally, we'd be this loud group of girls on a sleepover, but this time, nothing. It felt like we were waiting for something. I fell asleep after a while, but woke to the sounds of sobbing. It sounded exactly like Lily's cries earlier. I lay in the dark, wondering why Lily had come back to our room when she was so upset, and soon realised that Heather, the girl in the bed next to me, was also awake and listening. It was too dark to see anyone else. I tried to get my bearings and realised that the crying was coming from the bathroom. I nearly wet myself in fear. Both me and Heather were paralysed. I really wanted to sit up and move away from the bathroom door, but I couldn't. The sobbing started changing, from dry and raspy to high-pitched and borderline hysterical. It sounded like a woman now, not our friend. As the sobbing got louder and closer, I tried to make myself into a tiny ball, just peeking out from under the covers, not wanting to take my eyes away from where the bathroom door was. Suddenly, a small voice across from me said, "Lily?" Another girl was awake and listening. The crying cut off immediately. I didn't realise how loud it had gotten. I started wiggling into an upright position and leaning over to Heather's bed. I was almost up when we heard the showers turn on. At the same time, the door started violently flicking back and forth, not touching the wall each time, as if someone kept catching it, but flicking back and forth so fast we could hear the air passing over. It was still so dark, I couldn't see the actual door move, or the showers. The door was getting thrown open harder and harder, and now bouncing off the wall on our side. The air was thick, like a fog was in the room. I couldn't move. Thankfully, someone screamed. The door stopped dead still. The bathroom showers turned off, and there was this whoosh of air sound. It's impossible to explain, but it sounded freezing cold. I could hear something else, this guttural. I can still hear my head, but not replicate. It was awful. I started screaming, as did Heather and some of the others who had either been awake the whole time or had just come to. We all bundled out the door. I couldn't stop shaking. All of the adults ran out to see what was wrong and was greeted with 9 hysterical 12-year-olds. I think all they got out from us was that the bathrooms had broken showers and that Heather and I could hear a lady. I had this huge reluctance to discuss it for reasons I can't quite remember, and the others were the same. I had no idea who had spoken or screamed initially. Because we were a small group, and rather than argue with crying schoolgirls who refused to go back into that dorm, we went into another dorm, identical except for thankfully sharing the outside block of toilets rather than its own. We slept without pillows. No one wanted to return to retrieve theirs.
Be 12-year-old me, living on a military base in Maryland, still live here. Friends and I like to explore the base. One evening we used our imaginations. Suddenly we were knights. Badass. We found a particularly old building, most likely over 115 years old. We took up arms and stormed it like a castle. After slaying all the enemies that we imagined, we took a break to explore. We went upstairs. The building had 3 floors. We were on the 2nd floor, and explored different rooms. We all settled into an old meeting room with a long table and chairs. Keep in mind there were 5 of us. The table became our round table, so to speak. We played our game for a good hour until we decided to leave. I was the oldest, so I was the king. I led my knights downstairs. We see 2 figures. One is a man dressed in fine attire. The other is a small dog, possibly a bull terrier. Both are slightly translucent. The man snaps his fingers and the dog runs through the wall to the left. The man followed soon after. The king and his knights proceeded to nope the fuck out of there. We never went back.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.